Hello and welcome to the Empowered Minds podcast. I'm your host, Nathalie Bedrossian, student confidence coach and aspiring speaker. And I'm very, very excited today to present to you my longtime friend, Christelle Khoury, resident in psychiatry at University of Sherbrooke. Hi, Christelle.
Hi, Nat. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for thinking of inviting me.
No, thank you for coming. Honestly, I'm very, very excited for this. And you guys, we have an amazing topic to talk to you about today. So as you know, Christelle is an expert in psychiatry. So today we're going to be talking about social anxiety.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So let's get into it. What is social anxiety exactly?
The thing is, I'm going to start off with a disclaimer, okay? So in psychiatry and psychology, we tend to want to fit things into boxes. So we've done huge efforts to try to fit all of the anxious disorders, all of the personalities into specific boxes. But the reality of the thing is that it's not that clear cut. Most things fall along a spectrum. And social anxiety tends to lean towards the end of a spectrum that starts with shyness.
Okay.
So socially anxious people are very, very stressed when they are in contexts where they might be the objects of scrutiny and judgment. So it's basically an extreme fear of being judged. Whereas, let's say shy people, most shy people are more awkward in situations at first. It might take them more time to warm up, but it does not affect their functioning to the extent that socially anxious people have an effect on their lives.
Okay, so it's like a kind of spectrum. On this end, there's shyness. And on the other end, it's social anxiety, where it's like a kind of more extreme version of shyness.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I like to picture it, because it's hard to, even for us, it's hard to know what is normal and what is abnormal. Ultimately, it comes down to, is this affecting the quality of life of the person? Is it affecting them socially and their personal lives and their occupational lives? And how extreme is the anxiety? Because we've all had a bit of anxiety when we've had to perform, or when, I'm sure you've had
in
that
social
too.
situations.
I'm anxious right now, actually. but people that are shy or that are introverted, they're able still to go past that. And it doesn't generate as much stress and anxiety as it does to socially anxious people. And the downfall also of social anxiety is that these people might start avoiding social contexts, avoiding situations that might trigger their anxiety, which only tends to exacerbate the anxiety.
Yeah, because it's self-soothing.
Exactly.
Right? It's like the solution to what they're feeling, to all their negative, like the stress, the anxiety. And when they avoid it, that's like kind of a solution that makes them feel better. So they're more likely to do that.
Precisely.
The next time.
You're great at explaining it. Yeah, no, that's actually exactly it. It's kind of like a self-soothing behavior, but that ends up perpetuating the anxiety because you're not exposing yourself to the stress. Kind of like someone who is, basic phobia, afraid of spiders. If they live their entire life trying to avoid all spiders, the moment they're going to see a spider, they're going to freak out. Whereas if they slowly but surely become accustomed with a spider is far away, and then they come close to it, it'll be less scary.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a bad example. Social anxiety is not exactly like a fear of spiders, but all of the anxious disorders come into the same category of things that if you avoid them, it only becomes worse.
Because technically it is a fear. It's a fear of judgment.
It is definitely
a fear of judgment.
It is a fear. And it is actually, I learned that recently. So it is actually one of the most common anxiety disorders, up to between 8 to 12% of the population worldwide.
Really?
Depending on the studies, yeah.
And these are the ones that are diagnosed, right? Because then there are some that live with it that still are not undiagnosed.
Definitely. And they're usually, the diagnosis usually comes much later in life. Most people that have social anxiety, it starts at a young age. You're barely going to find someone who's 60 and just developed social anxiety, right? It could happen, but most of the times it happens around the age of puberty, adolescence, around 11, 12 years old. And the diagnosis often only comes 5 to 10 years later.
Oh, wow.
Once people notice that it's affecting their lives. Yeah.
So it's really when they're out there in their real life that they start seeing the kind of repercussions of it. Because when you're young, you're not really exposed to these intense social situations. Let's say.
And I guess sometimes when you're young, it's kind of normal as a kid to be shy around adults or to be shy in specific contexts. But the more you mature and the older you get, like the way we are made is that we naturally have a tendency to become less and less shy, except with the pandemic where like things have, like, completely
shifted,
gone out of
right?
hand and shifted.
Everyone kind of like went in their own bubble and that kind of just exacerbated like their social anxiety and shyness even more.
So this is it. It's like hard to define, but it's an extreme fear of being judged and scrutinized by people.
Yeah. And like you said, you know, a lot of people experience it like in their daily life, whether they're at a social event, whether, you know, they're at school, right, performing and, you know, they want to give a presentation. Like, again, you said it's difficult to define, but how would like, when should someone kind of, let's say, see a therapist or see someone, like what are the signs that you might be socially anxious?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The signs that you might be socially anxious, most people will feel that there is something that's not right. Okay, so most people will feel that they are getting extremely anxious about a situation, whereas rationally they know they shouldn't be. So it's not like their judgment is completely gone. They know that this is not normal, but they cannot help but have this intense fear. Definitely, if you are having panic attacks, this is a huge sign. If you are starting to avoid social context, if you are starting just to isolate yourself, to not see people, even if you are still making the effort to see people, but it is extremely hard for you to do so, I think it's definitely worth consulting with a physician. I mean, or a psychologist even. Sometimes it's hard to have access to psychiatrists immediately. But just being seen by a professional and having them explain to you what this anxiety is can be very empowering to someone.
Yeah, because you know what's wrong. Like, you know what to tackle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because when you experience it at first, you're like, is this normal? Like, does this happen to everyone? You don't know. But once you pinpoint it, like, okay, this is what's wrong, then you have an idea of, okay, like, this is what I can tackle. This is what I can work on. So it kind of gives you clarity.
Yeah, exactly. And usually your instinct is correct on what is normal to you and what is abnormal. Like you're going to sense there's something different. And what's the worst that could happen? You're going to go see the physician and they're going to be like, oh, you know, I'm not worried about that. Let's just have a follow-up. Or they're going to clearly diagnose you and then you can actually seek the help for it.
Absolutely. So like the line here is really when it starts affecting your life. Yes. That's when you should start like consulting, seek a therapist. When you see that like it's actually stopping you from either going into social events or you know, affecting you in other situations.
Or when you're experiencing the stress every single time you are in these situations.
Okay, so the frequency also.
The frequency as well. Definitely the frequency, the intensity, and the behaviors that you're taking to confront it. And like I said about the empowerment, it's really scary dealing with something that you don't understand. So just, I have patients sometimes that I see and I literally only see them once. I'm talking as if I have years of experience. I'm only my second year, okay? But some patients I've only seen once and it was just having explained to them what anxiety is and putting a label or a name on what they're living has helped them to understand that they're not alone in it. That it is something that is well known, that other people experience it. And now when it happens, they're able to recognize like, oh, hold on, this is my social anxiety. It's not me. Like there are two parts. I am not this social anxiety.
Yeah, to kind of dissociate from it. But
definitely.
So on the reverse like hand, on the other hand of that, when you, and not to go too off subject here, but what if like labeling it, right? Labeling it, saying like, oh, you have this disorder kind of gets you in that victim mindset that you're like, okay, you know, this is me and it's just an illness and it's part of me and I can't do much about it. Like, what if do you feel like it sometimes puts people in that situation as well? The fact that you're labeling that they have this illness?
That's a very good point. And it is something that I reflect upon a lot, be it in social anxiety or other disorders as well. I think as I use the word label, I did not like that I used that word, but we tend to use it often. There's definitely a downfall to putting labels on things. It's like you're well, on one hand, you are attributing everything that is happening to this,
Yeah.
which can definitely be, I'm going to use the word dangerous, because you might, or some people might have a tendency or be in an environment that is going to push them to just seek relief by saying, oh, I'm like that because I am like that.
Exactly, right? They'll kind of use that as an excuse
Yeah.
to justify the behavior.
Yes, but on the other hand, most people that actually seek help, they don't like that they're this way, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't like it. It's affecting their lives.
Absolutely.
It's hindering their progression in life. They don't like it, so they went to get help for this very reason. So more often than not, understanding it is actually helpful, and it doesn't really make you stand by it and just like label yourself with the diagnosis. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. And there's often groups for people that have these kinds of things, and just discussing it with people that are experiencing the same thing can also help you see that there is a way out of it.
And that you're not the only one who
Exactly.
experiences this.
And when you've lived so long with it, I mean, it's kind of normal that initially you're going to be thinking, oh my God, this is me. I can't change. Let me just stay in this. But the more and more you understand it, the more you try to work on yourself with the help of a professional, with the help of friends and family, even once they understand what it is, the better you get. And the chances of remission from it are pretty high. I don't remember the exact percentage, but most people are able to get past it.
So again, most people, again, when they receive the label, like don't see it as something that's like a doom, or that's like you're doomed to be socially anxious, that it's part of you, that, you know, you'll never get rid of it. It's mostly like gaining clarity on it, knowing what it is, knowing that this is what you have, and then seeking the right professionals, and then being surrounded like with the right environment for you to get out of that situation, or to help yourself in the best way that you can.
Exactly.
And going back to, just because I'm very curious about shyness and how, again, it's related to social anxiety, just because I was a very, very shy kid, still am a shy adult.
But you're performing pretty well right now.
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot throughout the years on how to manage it and how to cope with it. But again, I don't think I'm on the extreme social anxiety side, but definitely like social situations are a bit more challenging to me. So how are, again, the two related? So we did speak about the spectrum. So they're not two completely different things.
I mean, not really, because by definition, socially anxious people can be considered to be shy. And like, I mean, if from the outside perspective, you're not always going to be able to make the difference between someone who's shy and someone who's socially anxious. It's really in how they experience it. Is it a personality trait like shyness, or is it my God, I cannot talk. An anxious state.
Okay, so the thing is that shyness is more of like a personality trait.
Yeah.
Like you're either introverted, extroverted.
Yeah.
Shyness is like kind of a characteristic that you
Yeah,
have.
and most people are not really bothered by it. I mean, they know they're shy, but you know, they're still able to go about their things.
Yeah.
And like they tend to blush more. They tend, you know,
Oh my
to
God,
just
yes.
like be a little bit more on the side initially. But also shy people tend to warm up quicker to, and like an environments where they're comfortable with their loved ones, their friends. There comes a time when they're more comfortable. They become like more at ease and less shy, I guess.
Absolutely. So they tend to kind of like open up with time
Yes.
and be more themselves and, you know, get rid of that initial stress or
Yeah.
anxiety that they experience in social situations, where on the other hand, social anxiety, it doesn't really get resolved.
It doesn't, but some people will be comfortable and more open with their families or like very close friends that they've known for a long time, where this anxiety was like they were able to control this anxiety, and it just went away, and they're more comfortable. They don't get super anxious. They don't have panic attacks when they're around, you know, like family members and friends.
Yeah.
But as soon as they meet a stranger, or they're in a context where there's a lot of people, or they're exposed to the risk of judgment from others, because this is where socially anxious people really get anxious. It's like they're afraid people are going to judge them even while they're eating, while they're breathing, even like that they're going to walk the wrong way, and that this is going to bother the next person. You know, it's like those are not things shy people really think about. They're more like centered on, oh, I'm shy. Like I don't really I don't want to bother anyone, but okay, it's like it'll be fine, and then they're able to get past it.
Okay, so social anxiety is also about the context,
Yes.
right? So I'm curious, what type of context like would trigger social anxiety versus a context that doesn't?
So again, at the risk of repeating myself a million times, but social anxiety, just by being the fear of being judged, is triggered even more when you're in contexts where there's a lot of people. So going to restaurants, going to malls, just sitting in a class, raising your hand in a class like this can be a huge thing, because then you're at risk of everyone looking at you and everyone judging you and everyone thinking, oh my God, what a crazy person and how stupid she is. And so all of these thoughts come into the person's brain. Definitely more like if you're at a party as well, like a big party, definitely in context where there's a lot of people versus just being, one-on-one or like with a few people. It would be different. And let's say I was socially anxious, I could definitely not be doing this right now.
Yeah.
Like context like this, when there's a camera on you and there's people on YouTube or whatever that are at risk of judging everything you're doing. But that's an extreme context, of course. So it's really, the more eyes are on you, the more stressful it is.
The more stressful
basically.
it is. Okay. And it's really, again, about judgment, about people evaluating you constantly on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's so like debilitating. Like I understand how people who have an extreme form of like social anxiety could just not function in these situations, because imagine like constantly just being there and feeling like you're constantly evaluated by everyone in judgment. Like everything you do, like the way you breathe could be
literally the way
you
breathe. I've seen people that this was the thing, like even being on a bus, you don't want to breathe too much to not bother the person next to you. Like this.
Yeah.
It's unlivable. And the worst part is they don't just think about it when they're in the situation. They think about it, they ruminate about it once they go back home, when they go back to their own safe place. They start thinking about the things that they might have done during the day, or the things that where they might have bothered someone, what X person on the street thought about them. It's debilitating not only when they are in the social context, but also once they leave it.
Yeah.
Which does not happen to shy people. Again, like once you're out, you're out. You're not going to ruminate about it. And
definitely. So one of the actual like consequences is also ruminating about it when you're not even in the situation, kind of replaying the scenario. What could have I done better? What, asking yourself all these questions like, oh my God, did I look like a complete idiot? These kind of questions.
No, they probably think, oh my God, I looked like a complete idiot.
Looked like, okay.
Not even did I. Most of the times it's like, oh my God.
What did I say? What did I do?
Yeah.
Definitely. What other like consequences or like things do you feel like people experience when they're like in a socially anxious situation?
What other consequences could happen?
Yeah, what can happen? Let's say an effect of that on their, let's say, academic performance, on just even like their well-being, their relationships.
Yeah.
Like, does that affect these areas of their lives? And if so, how?
Oh, well, if you're always in this stressed, anxious state, it is definitely going to affect you in all spheres of your life, right? Be it just by the fact that you're exposing yourself less to social situations, but also because you're ruminating so much and you become more irritable. You might like be sleep deprived as well because you keep thinking about that. You might have other symptoms that are just affecting you in other spheres. And actually, there is a big correlation between social anxiety disorder and depressive disorder, because these people sometimes, once you've been so tense and on your nerves for so long and constantly irritated and that afraid, you get to a point where you might even have a burnout. And, you become, be it like severely depressed or mildly depressed, or just, like depressive symptoms that are a sign that your body is really exhausted of being like this.
Because it takes so much of your energy.
It does.
Like, just to manage all the symptoms.
Does.
And it takes away from like your focus, your energy that you want to put on other things, like your studies, your job, your relationships. Like it's that's why it's so debilitating, and it affects everything in your
Definitely.
life, right?
And focus is a big thing. Focus is a huge thing. It might affect, your ability to concentrate at school, your academic performance and consequence. It's just so debilitating, and it doesn't, like, when you see someone you don't know they're going through all of this, because to you they just seem shy, but the way they feel inside is like they're really suffering, but we just don't see it.
Yeah.
And that's why I find it sad that we don't discuss about that more often, or people don't seek help more often.
Or that people often like just assume and judge
Yeah.
based on the exterior. Like, oh, why aren't you talking? Why aren't you saying anything?
Yeah.
Like the person's just focusing all their energy on
Yeah.
like managing the symptoms, managing the situation. So let's just be kind to each other and not like always judge the quiet person, or, you know, like say things or think things that and assume things that are not necessarily correct about them. Maybe just have a conversation, ask them a question, because it's not that they don't want to be around people, right? It's they want to be loved. Like they want to be part of the situation, but it's just they're managing all these symptoms, all these, you know, physical symptoms, even like sweating, redness, whatever it is, like heart rate,
Even panic attacks.
panic attacks. So kind of just maybe talk to them and make sure that they're also included, even if they don't talk that much, or they're not like as involved. It's not that they don't want to be with you or they don't want to talk to you. It's that they're just managing all of that in their mind. So now that we've seen like how it could affect a person's life, like what would you give as advice or things for people who have social anxiety to kind of help them cope? Now, obviously here we're not like in a therapy session or anything. You know, of course, these things can be worked long-term with a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. But what advice can you give for people to help them cope with social anxiety?
Definitely, as I said earlier, the first step really comes in recognizing it. Because if you don't recognize it, you cannot handle it. If you don't know what it is, you can't like be able to recognize it when it comes up and defuse from it. So definitely this is a first thing. And I think before I even answer this question, I'm gonna ask you a question, okay?
Go ahead.
Can you tell me about a situation where you were actually in danger? Or can you recall a place where you were in danger and what did you do? Like a real danger.
Actually in danger. That's a
Or
good
you thought you were
question.
actually in danger.
Or I thought I was actually in danger.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing that's coming to my mind is actually a funny one. It's a funny story.
Okay.
But I usually love to take walks. And this happened a couple of years back, actually. So I was just walking on my own. And then I look behind me just because I'm always aware of my surroundings, which we should be. So I was looking behind me and I see this man kind of walking fast towards me. And I was like, okay, you know, I kept my pace.
Oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, really, I was freaking out. So I was just walking and then I look again and this man is closer to me and he's picking up his pace.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, what's happening? Not like, come on, you know, stress response up. I'm like, I'm ready to fight, you know? And I just start walking quicker.
Okay.
Like I'm almost running. Like I pick up my pace. I look back and the guy is running after me.
Oh, okay.
I was freaking out. I was like really in panic mode. And he actually comes up close to me and I just turn and I'm like, what do you want? And he just comes and he stops me and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were someone else. I thought you were my friend. And that was like the relief, like the sigh of relief that came after me. But the stress and that's in that situation, I was like, okay, I'm about to get kidnapped. He's probably going to murder me. And I'm really into true crime. So like the worst scenarios were in my mind. So yeah, that was a very stressful situation I was in. Dangerous, but not really.
No, but you thought you were in danger. So
Yeah.
my point is, in that context, you thought you were in danger.
Yes.
Your reaction was to actually pick up your pace and flee and try to just like, your body reacted before your mind even planned what you were going to do, technically.
Yeah.
So when you are in a situation that is actually dangerous, you don't ruminate. You don't get in your head and try to think and think and think and think. You just act.
You don't have time to think.
You don't have time to think, and your body is just like in survival mode. You want to get out of this situation.
Yes.
So my point here is that in all situations where one might get anxious, let's say social anxiety, for instance, what people tend to do is freeze. If you were in actual danger, like, I mean, if you were actually going to die, or if like you were actually being scrutinized by people and this is dangerous, you wouldn't just sit there and have a panic attack and like freeze inside. You would actually, your body would pick up its pace and start running.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you don't, because there's a part of your brain that is stuck in thinking like, oh my God, this is so dangerous. Oh my God, I'm so anxious. And the other part is like, no, like, girl, chill.
Yeah.
You're not gonna die. It's not an actual threat. So just being able to recognize situations where there is an actual threat and situations where there aren't actual threats is a huge thing. So my first advice, all of this to say, like, my first advice, but this comes with time, okay, is to try to ask yourself, is it actually dangerous? Like, is it a real threat? And it doesn't have to be in the moment when you're experiencing it. It could be after, once you're ruminating or whatever. Like, was this actually dangerous? You know, how did I react? Okay, well, I guess it wasn't, because otherwise my body would have wanted to save me before my brain went to all of this. So this is one thing. When you're when you're facing an actual threat, you don't think, you just react.
Yeah.
When you're overthinking, it is not an actual threat. Another thing is, and this is like the most basic thing in the world, but please breathe. Please breathe. We have no idea how much breathing can affect our bodies and how much it can slow our heart rate. It can just make us feel connected and recentered. So whenever you feel like you are getting a spike of social anxiety and you're around people, try to take space. Like, if you're with people, I don't know, go to the bathroom, go to a separate room, go anywhere you can, and just take 3 to 5 deep breaths. Put your hand on your heart and breathe deeply 5 times.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can go back to the situation.
And also, one thing I heard about that is that focus on the exhale, right?
Yes.
Because that's what decreases your heart rate, right? Because the inhale increases the heart rate.
Yeah.
So make sure that your exhale is longer than your inhale. And I also heard about this thing called like the physiological sigh. Have you heard about it?
Tell me about it.
So it's like you breathe in, then you make like this extra breath.
Oh, yeah.
And then you sigh.
Yeah.
It's like that. You make sure that you filled up your lungs.
That's actually,
to
I think they use in
maximum.
yoga as well, I think. Like,
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And that really, if you do a couple of those, like physiologically, your body's just going to calm down. And that's why with like, especially with social anxiety, because on the spot, like, you don't have time to manage your thoughts or think like, you know, oh, okay, this is probably not real danger. Like, you don't have time for that. You're just so like thinking about, that's why like what you said is right. It's like, this is something that's going to come with time.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's why like on the spot, especially when you're starting out, breathing is like the most efficient thing you can do.
It is.
And because just physiologically with your body, it's going to actually calm yourself down.
And it helps you just take a step back from the situation, because like you said, it's not the time to try to solve it. You can't. You're being bombarded by so many like thoughts and so many feelings.
Exactly.
You just need to take a step back from it. So yeah, it sounds like a basic thing, but definitely breathing. Well, we might discuss this at another time, but you know, there's some people that have anxiety specifically in situations where they have to perform. When they're giving
performance anxiety.
When they're giving a speech, or when even an interview, right? Because interviews can be very stressful. And we tend to think that people value the other person replying quickly. But that is actually not true, at least not always. Actually, I think I read an article once that said that even in interviews, people that take their time to answer, that take a couple of seconds before answering, are overvalued compared to other competitors.
It's true, because it shows that you're actually thinking about what you're saying. You're not just blurting anything out. You're just like, actually what you're saying, you took the time to think about it and to, you know, review it. Like,
100%.
okay, I'm taking my time. So take your time.
So
don't need to like always be.
So if you're on the anxious side, that's good news. You have like 10 to 15 seconds to just breathe and like recenter yourself before you answer or before you start your presentation. No one's going to be counting these seconds, honestly. And I know it might be hard to believe, but every single person in this world is self-centered. So when you're sitting and you're anxious, you're probably thinking that the other person is judging you or scrutinizing you, or thinking that, I don't know, you're doing something wrong, that you're walking wrong, that you're breathing wrong, whatever. But they're probably just thinking about their own day, their own lives, 100%. What they're going to eat next, where they messed up, a fight they had with their wife, whatever. Like, you know, the most likely thing is they are not thinking about you.
100%. And I read a paper of a study about this. It's actually called the spotlight effect.
Okay.
Right? So they put a couple of people in the room and one person was wearing this like completely abnormal shirt. Like it was a completely ridiculous shirt. And of course, the person wearing it was very self-conscious about it. But the thing is, when they asked the other people around them, most people didn't even recognize it. Like people are just so focused on themselves, on what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like the thing I, again, always tell myself is like, I'm not that important. People have their lives, like that important in that social situation, right? Like people have their own lives. People are focusing on their own issues, on their own problems. Like no one is so focused on you like you are focused on yourself. That's like, again, the spotlight effect. We tend to have like this spotlight on us to be like, okay, everyone's looking at me, but that's often not the case. So one thing that works with me a lot in like social situations is I tend to not remove the spotlight from myself, because like you're always going to be kind of self-conscious.
There's literally a spotlight on you right now.
But so it's kind of like not maybe be less self-centered, but maybe like be more interested in the other person and like focus more on others, because that balances out all the thoughts I have about like, okay, am I saying this right? Am I doing this right? Am I performing in this situation? So it's maybe be more interested in people and ask them questions and actually be like interested in their lives and what they have to say. And that could also be a way to relieve that pressure from yourself, right?
Yeah. And those are all, what we've discussed so far are really all things that you can do on the short term, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, except, being able to recognize when it's actual threat or not. This takes practice. But there are also ways to confront it on the long term. The key is really to expose yourself. But if you're going from a place where, it's a spectrum, right? So if you're going from the end of the spectrum where you've been isolating, you're not seeing anyone anymore, I'm really making it extreme. You don't want to just go to a party straight up or like go to, I don't know, like a huge fancy restaurant,
Yes.
You don't want to do that. You want to expose yourself slowly but surely.
Gradually.
Exactly. You kind of want to be nudged into it, not flooded. That's kind of the distinction I made. You don't want any flooding, just a little bit of gentle nudging, like taking it step by step, just to habituate yourself progressively. And this is actually the basis of cognitive behavior therapy and exposure. Yes, you can go see, definitely therapy is something that is primordial in this. If you are socially anxious, it is going to help. But even if you don't have the means to get like a therapist, or you're not able to, exposing yourself progressively is part of the treatment. So if there's someone by your side that you can rely on, that you trust enough to help you in this, then definitely just a little exposure goes a long way. And on the other hand, I've been talking about people that are able to do it without medication, but that's what
I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, there are certain people that, again, it's a spectrum, right? And we did not choose our genes, and we did not choose the environmental factors we were exposed to in our childhood. So there is definitely a reason why someone becomes socially anxious and someone else does not become socially anxious. But the one thing we can deal with is how we are now.
Yes.
And where we take it from here.
Absolutely.
Therapy is one thing, medication is another. If the person is not able to function anymore, if they are not even disposed to being in therapy and they're sitting constantly ruminating and being stressed in the therapy session, medication is something that can definitely help. And honestly, I have seen patients that I did not even recognize after they took medication and went into treatment. Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes it can really be a life changer and a game changer. Yeah. And if you get on a medication, it doesn't mean you're going to be on it for your entire life. I know this is a fear that some people have, but some people only take it for a year or two, and then they're able to cope with it better. So yeah, that's one thing. And medication has been very taboo in our society. I don't know how to say taboo.
Yeah, well, I understand that because I'm also from like the mind of like
Yeah,
try
I saw your facial
everything.
reaction. Like,
Yeah, no,
Christelle,
I'm
stop talking.
no, not at all.
kidding.
Not at all. Like of course medication is needed in some situations, but I don't believe that it's the first like course of action. Like there's so many things that you can try before that to kind of try to deal with it. Like medication is kind of, to me, again, a last resort thing. And you can definitely challenge me on that. Like it's
I will challenge you.
Go ahead.
Definitely if you're still able to function.
Yes, exactly. That's why I said like extreme situations.
And you're not in complete distress and not able to try anything else because, or if you're not depressed, because as I said, sometimes it can lead to major depression.
Yes.
Like just being so tensed up and like completely out of resources. So it definitely is not the first course of action in most cases. And we try to go for like therapy, like other methods for the person to handle their anxiety. But in situations where it's very severe and it has a huge impact on the person's quality of life, it is a method that works sometimes quicker and that actually combined with therapy works better than just therapy alone.
Absolutely. And the thing is, do you feel like today, again, the population is over medicated when it comes to like mental health issues?
That's a
I know
good
it's a controversial question. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but again, in your impression with what you know so far, do you feel like we're over medicated? Like we're all looking for this quick solution, this quick fix?
Yes. And I feel like this comes from also being overdiagnosed. I have a love-hate relationship for the DSM, you know.
Oh, yeah. I think all psychiatrists do.
I hate relationship with a little bit of love. Don't tell my the doctors I work with. But the diagnosis criteria have become so inclusive that it's hard to tell normality from abnormality.
Yeah.
And just from this, it is hard to know what you want to treat and what you don't want to treat. And from this, again, it's hard to know what you want to medicate and what you don't want to medicate. And I feel like most of the things that are overdiagnosed and overtreated, though, are not really anxiety. Because if it is anxiety and you give a treatment, you will know soon enough if it's working and if it was anxiety or not.
Yeah.
Like usually it takes 2 to 3 months to work properly.
Okay.
And for some people, it's a life changer. For others, it doesn't change anything. Okay. So for those people that it doesn't change anything, it might be something else. It might also be, you know, personality traits that you want to work on specifically, or environmental factors that are contributing. There's like many, many other aspects that might be contributing to it. And so, yeah, definitely some people receive medications and we end up removing it because it's not helping. Some people keep it. And honestly, I doubt it's like probably placebo effect.
Okay.
Placebo effect is really underestimated, but some studies have shown that the placebo effect is actually works for about 50% sometimes.
Wow.
Which is a big part.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, but some people that are really anxious, it really helps, especially for panic attacks and for people that get extremely distressed very quickly and they're not able to resonate and calm themselves up.
Yeah.
It helps break this loop, break this cycle to help you recenter yourself quicker.
Yeah.
And with time, even though you're on medication, you acquire the skills to do it by yourself and you can be tapered off the medication.
So it doesn't, like, not everyone, let's say, develops an addiction or needs to take it.
No, actually,
for their whole life.
Anxiety disorders, the medications are not addictive at all.
Oh, no? Okay, so it's more the depressive disorders?
It's actually more for insomnia and like it's really more the benzodiazepines and things like that.
Okay,
but
with alcohol too, I guess. Like
it's really just inhibitors of serotonin recapture. So they just increase the serotonin in the brain. They're not addictive at all, actually. So you don't develop an addiction. But warning, if you are on a medication, don't stop it. It has to be tapered off, especially for the molecules. Yeah, because if you just stop them immediately, it leads to huge side effects that you don't want to have.
Okay.
So yeah, but definitely like your medical practitioner, your physician is going to be able to help you out with that. And like if you need a medication. Again, I completely agree that it is not the first resource, but sometimes it is necessary. And I think that it's important for medication to become less taboo because it can change your life.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Especially for people who aren't able to do these
just
first courses of
mobilize
action.
themselves. Exactly.
Like sometimes it becomes so debilitating that people can't even, go to these first course of actions.
Yeah.
So that's when like medication can play a
Exactly.
really, really big part.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's actually very good to know.
You're welcome.
So what do you think about like all self-confidence? Because I love that topic, like self-confidence, self-esteem. So self-esteem, self-confidence, and what role do you think that could play with social anxiety? Like, do you think they're related in any way?
They're definitely related. Just like, like I said, people that have social anxiety are more comfortable in situations where they're around people they know, but it's also because they're more confident around these people, because they know that these people, have come to appreciate them for who they are and have come to know their strength and value them as a person. So it is definitely easier to be comfortable and not anxious around people that see you like this. So if you're able to do the work on yourself, to be able to see yourself like this without an outer perspective, I don't know if that makes sense, but it definitely helps. It definitely helps being less anxious because you have the tools to see yourself differently. And I think that self-confidence and shyness or like social anxiety are not necessarily opposites. Like self-confidence is not the opposite of social anxiety.
No.
Some people are confident, but they are feeling super anxious and they don't understand why, and they don't know how to get out of it. And yet there are some people that are just have some skills to learn on how they affirm themselves and take a stand, and this can definitely help them get out of socially anxious situations.
Yes.
I thought you were rolling your eyes.
That's what that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I believe confidence is a skill. It's a skill you develop. It's a muscle that you train with time. And I believe it really helps in situations in social anxiety, even like in depression, when you start like just affirming yourself, being comfortable setting your boundaries, and knowing, like believing that you can actually do things, right? And that comes with practice too. It comes with practice. Again, starting small, gradually, little wins here and there, and it could definitely help on the long term.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So what's one last, let's say, piece of advice you'd give to university students? I know you're still in the process. You've been studying for so long. So what's like one piece of advice you'd give to students who, let's say, have social anxiety or have little traits, not necessarily the disorder itself, but maybe little traits of social anxiety?
I'm trying to think of one advice I would give them. I mean, I said it earlier, but I'm going to repeat it again. Everyone is fighting their own battle. Everyone is so focused on themselves and how they're going to get through their own day that there's not much energy left for them to look around and judge you or scrutinize you.
Definitely.
And you might perceive everything you're doing wrong, but believe me, there are people on the outside that are only seeing what you're doing right.
Yeah.
And that are there by your side to help you. So please, if you feel like you are anxious to the point that it is affecting your level of functioning, that it's affecting your quality of life, that you are starting to doubt your own worth, that you're starting to have, symptoms that you don't recognize, talk about it.
Yes.
Seek help.
You're not alone.
And you're not crazy. And you're not abnormal. Again, it's a spectrum. Like you're not crazy. There's no such thing.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And it's just like all the criteria that disorders are founded on are based on the average. So I guess it only means you're like beyond average. You're like different. You're not average. So
yeah. That way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for that. So thank you again for being here, Christelle.
Thank you.
It was very, very enjoyable. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We are definitely going to be doing more of these. So we're going to be covering performance anxiety, right? Which is a type of social anxiety.
Yes, definitely.
We're definitely going to be covering that. So stay tuned, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this. Don't hesitate to leave a review, share this with friends, and I'll see you on the next episode.